Hey, tonight, we're heading into the clanging, steaming heart of the Ottoman Empire, not through battlefields or throne rooms, but through its kitchens. You'll walk in worn slippers across cool stone floors, past bubbling copper cauldrons and stacks of delicate porcelain bowls, straight into the secret world of the Sultan's chefs. But don't let the scent of rosewater and roasted lamb fool you. This isn't a peaceful place. In fact, you probably wouldn't survive 5 minutes there without slipping up. Maybe you oversalt the stew. Maybe your bread is late. Maybe your silence isn't quite silent enough. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It really helps more sleepy history lovers like you find the channel. And hey, drop a comment to tell me where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. I love seeing how far these quiet journeys travel. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You enter the kitchens of Topkapi Palace, not as a guest, but as a new recruit, a kitchen novice. No one greets you. No one even looks up. Your linen shoes barely make a sound as you move between long wooden tables and thick stone ovens, the air dense with saffron, ash, and anxiety. Around you, dozens, no, hundreds of other boys and men bend quietly over their stations. One lad slowly stirs a syrup in a heavy bronze pot, never breaking eye contact with the surface. Another kneads dough with such concentration you wonder if his life depends on it. You'll soon learn it does. The palace kitchens aren't like any kitchen you've ever known. This isn't a place of jolly cooks and cheerful clatter. It's a hierarchy, a machine, a pressure chamber. The head chef, the Matba Emini, walks the halls with silent steps and merciless eyes. Beneath him are dozens of submasters, each in charge of their own room, the pilaf room, the sweets room, the sherbet chamber, the butcher's yard, and above them all, the Sultan. Not that you'll ever see him, but his appetite rules every flick of a ladle, every slice of melon, every flicker of flame. Your job, watch, peel, pour. And above all, don't speak unless spoken to. It's strange, really, how quiet it is. The kitchens feed thousands, yet the only sound is the low hum of boiling broth and the scrape of spoons against cauldrons. You quickly learn why. Speak too loudly or without permission, and your voice might echo into the wrong ears. You remember hearing of one apprentice who made a joke while carving onions. Nothing lewd, nothing treasonous, just a passing remark about the master's crooked hat. He was gone by sundown. Some say he was reassigned to cleaning the latrines. Others whisper darker fates. So, you listen, you mimic, you slice cucumbers in perfect half-moons and line them on platters like scales on a fish. You carry trays with the grace of a dancer. You wipe sweat off your brow only when no one's looking. Your hands become quick, your feet become invisible, but your nerves, they stay raw. One morning, just before the third call to prayer, you're assigned to help prepare breakfast for the Sultan's second cousin, a nobleman visiting from the outer provinces. It's not a big meal, just eggs, olives, warm flatbread, and honey. Simple. Yes, but still terrifying. You're told to watch the honey pot. That's it. Just keep it warm. Not boiling, not bubbling, just warm. And of course, it bubbles. You turn away for a moment to adjust your sash. It's only a second. But when you turn back, the surface of the honey is frothing ever so slightly, the faintest curl of smoke escaping into the air. It doesn't burn, but it smells wrong. You freeze. Should you swap the pot, tell someone hide it. Too late. The submaster passes by, pauses, sniffs the air, and narrows his eyes. Who's in charge of the honey, he asks, but not loudly, not angrily, just evenly, which is worse. You're not brave enough to stay silent. You raise your hand. He doesn't speak again, just points to a spot by the corner, the waiting corner, as they call it. You stand there for nearly an hour, not moving, not allowed to help, just standing, visible to everyone, invisible to mercy. That's your first taste of punishment, and it's just the beginning. Later, you'll hear stories from older apprentices about the boy who dropped a single orange on the stone floor and was made to copy verses of kitchen rules for 3 nights without sleep. Or the butcher who cut a lamb the wrong way and was denied meals for an entire day. Historians still argue whether these punishments were ceremonial or cruel. One steward whispers to you while you mop the broth room. But we know they happened, we felt them, you nod, but you don't speak. Not here, not now, not until you've survived a few more weeks. But as the sun sets and the ovens cool, there's something oddly calming about it all. The rhythm of the work, the dance of duty, the quiet pride of a fig sliced just right. You're not safe, not yet, but you're learning the rules. And in the palace kitchens, that might just keep you alive. You wake before dawn, not from an alarm, but from the rhythm of it, the quiet rustle of linen aprons being tied, the dull thud of firewood dropped into ovens, the distant cough of someone already stirring lentils. In the kitchens of Topkapi Palace, time moves without bells. You just learn to sense when the work begins. You roll off your thin mat and splash icy water onto your face. There's no time to complain. If you're not in place before your master arrives, you'll be marked absent, and 3 absences means banishment to the cleaning pits. Some say it's worse than being dismissed entirely. You slip past rows of sleeping figures, some of whom never really fall asleep, they just lie still. Eyes half open, listening for trouble. At the entrance to the prep hall, a steward waits. Arms crossed, he checks your hands before letting you through. Fingernails, wrists, no ink, no crumbs, no excuses. The kitchens are already alive with quiet precision. In the bread chamber, you see a boy no older than 10 moving dough balls from one table to another, his face blank with concentration. A few steps away, the senior chef, known only as White Beard, is slicing quince so thin it's nearly transparent. You've been reassigned today to the soup division. The soup master doesn't speak much. His eyebrows do most of the talking. You quickly learn that 1 raised brow means faster. 2 raised brows mean start over, and a flat stare with no movement at all, that means punishment is coming. You don't wait to find out what. Your task this morning is simple. Bring the giant iron pot from the storage room to the fire pit. It takes 2 others to help you roll it, inch by inch, over smooth, worn tiles that remember centuries of footsteps. You get it there without disaster. That alone feels like a victory. As the stock begins to boil, the master allows you to stir. The ladle is taller than you are, and every sweep through the broth is a slow-motion dance, no splashing, no uneven circles, always clockwise, never hurried. Salt, the master says. Finally, you nod, you lift the spoon, and then you pause, because in the Ottoman kitchens, adding salt isn't just seasoning, it's ceremony, it's hierarchy, and it's dangerous if done wrong. You glance to your left. An older boy once told you a story about a cook who salted a dish without permission. Not too much salt, just premature. The submaster made him kneel at the gates of the kitchen for an entire day, holding a clay bowl over his head like a crown of failure. You wait. The master nods, barely, and you drop in a pinch no more. The salt disappears into the swirl, like a secret sealed beneath the surface. The first taste is reserved for the overseer, a pale man with thin lips and a walking stick, who appears precisely at sunrise and disappears just as silently. He dips a silver spoon into the broth, closes his eyes, and says nothing. Then he leaves. That's all you get. No praise, but no punishment either. That's the highest compliment here. As the day unfolds, you begin to notice things. The way people glance over their shoulders, even when no one's behind them. The way they never gossip, not out loud. You realize the kitchens aren't just about food, they're about surveillance. There are whispers of kitchen spies. Some say they're just senior apprentices, rewarded for reporting mistakes. Others claim they're eunuchs from the inner palace, disguised in kitchen robes, listening for anything disloyal, any word that might dishonor the Sultan's food. It sounds like a story until you see someone vanish. It happens during midday prep. A boy spills water on a pastry tray. He panics, rushes to clean it, but the dough's ruined. He's sent to the corner. 10 minutes later, he's gone. His mat, his apron, even his nameplate above his cot, all removed by sundown. No one asks where he went. You don't either. You learn to speak only in verbs, to look only at the task before you, to nod instead of answer. You even change the way you breathe softer, quieter, shallower. During break, you eat sitting on the warm tile floor near the courtyard. Your meal is simple lentils, barley bread, dried figs. You eat quickly, grateful for every bite. But there's no laughter, no stories, just the sound of chewing and the occasional rustle of a breeze through the narrow window slits. Later, as the sun tilts west, a quiet alarm runs through the kitchen. The bread from the imperial oven is late. That bread, soft, round, brushed with egg and sesame, is meant to arrive at precisely the same moment every day. Not a minute early, not a second late. Because if the Sultan's table is set and the bread isn't warm, someone will pay. The delay is only 3 minutes. But it's 3 minutes too many. You're not involved. You didn't bake the bread. But you see what happens. The junior baker is summoned not by name, but with a single bell tone. He walks, trembling, to the center of the prep room, where the overseer waits. There's no shouting, just a question. Why the boy stammers something about the firewood being damp, the dough taking longer to rise, a miscalculation in timing. The overseer doesn't respond. He simply hands the boy an object, a wooden spoon, painted red. You learn what that means soon enough. For the rest of the day, the boy must wear the spoon tucked into his sash, a visible, silent badge of failure. No one will speak to him. He will serve, clean, and work like usual, but always alone. It's not a beating. It's not exile. But somehow, it feels worse. The red spoon punishment is more common than you thought, almost elegant in its cruelty, public, but silent, shame without scars. A reminder that here, even a crust of bread can break a career. Historians still argue whether these punishments were intended to train obedience or simply to terrify young workers into silence. Some call it discipline, others call it theater. But in the stone shadows of Topkapa's kitchen, theory means nothing. Only survival matters. As night falls, the ovens begin to dim. The last pots are scrubbed with sand and lemon peel. The copper ladles are hung on their hooks like soldiers at rest, and the kitchen slowly returns to stillness. You lie back on your mat, bones aching, arms heavy with the day. Outside, a faint call to prayer drifts over the walls. You close your eyes, and you dream of steam, of silence, of that red spoon you never want to wear. Not ever. The next morning, you wake up to whispers. Not voices, exactly more like the soft suggestion of movement, like the palace itself is exhaling. Someone has been punished overnight, and though no one says it, everyone feels it. A sleeping mat is missing. A pillow lies folded too neatly. The bowl of lentils set aside for that person's breakfast has been quietly removed. You don't ask who it was. That's the first rule of surviving here. Don't name ghosts. Your hands are sore today. Blisters have bloomed along your fingers from stirring soup, and the cuts from yesterday's peach slicing haven't fully closed. But the pain is quiet, like the rest of the kitchen, and you carry it with you like seasoning part of the dish, not the flaw. This morning, you're sent to assist in the sweets chamber. The room smells of cinnamon, rose water, and burnt sugar. At first, it seems like a dream assignment. No meat to carve, no boiling pots to guard, just trays of delicate pastries and soft, golden dates. But you soon learn the truth it is here that the pressure is highest. Because this is where the Sultan's sherbets are made. Not just any drink, but syrups infused with rare fruits, crushed herbs, and spices so expensive that dropping even a pinch might cost someone their fingers. The sherbet master doesn't speak to you. He just points. You follow. You are given a brass basin and told to crush dried apricots into a smooth pulp. The pestle is heavy, and it takes longer than you think. By the time your elbows ache and your forearms burn, the pulp is only half finished. The master stops by, scoops up a sample with the tip of a small spoon, tastes it, and frowns. Not a word, not a gesture, just the frown. You work faster? That's when you first hear about the spoon test. It's not given to everyone, only to those who seek to rise from apprentice to junior steward. It's said to be fair and terrifying. A long table is set up in the central hall, with 5 silver spoons placed on embroidered cloth. Each spoon contains a different item: a broth, a sweet, a paste, a puree, and a jelly. The test, you must identify the ingredients of each dish perfectly, every spice, every herb, every preparation method. One mistake, and you're sent back to the lowest rank. You scoff at the idea until you see it. That evening, the kitchen is oddly quiet. Most of the apprentices are huddled near the spice shelves, peering through the shadows into the hall where the test is taking place. You join them, heartbeat thick in your ears. The boy being tested is older than you, sharp-eyed and confident. He approaches each spoon slowly, tasting with reverence. For a while, it seems he'll pass. He lists ingredients in calm, even tones: pistachio, rosewater, honey, pounded rice. But on the 4th spoon, he hesitates. His lips press together, his eyes dart to the ceiling. He says, "Pear," then maybe quince. There's a murmur from the back of the room. The steward shakes his head. It was medlar. The boy bows his head, returns the spoon to its cloth, and walks out of the room alone. He doesn't cry, but he doesn't speak either. That night, his sash is gone, and his cot is folded. He's still in the palace, but not in the kitchens. You suspect he's been reassigned to laundry at best. You return to your chores the next day with more care than before. You're back in the prep room when an accident happens. A junior cook knocks over a basket of pomegranates while rushing to refill a water jug. Dozens of the bright red fruits tumble across the floor, one of them rolling right into a bucket of onion peelings. He picks it up, wipes it on his sleeve, and places it back in the basket. You see him do it. So does another boy. There's silence tangible, pressurized. Later that day, during spice inventory, the junior cook is called aside. Quietly, casually, you never hear what's said. But the next time pomegranates are served in the palace, they come from a different crate. The incident becomes known without ever being spoken as the missing pomegranate. And just like that, you realize how fragile trust is here. Historians still argue whether these kinds of informal enforcements were written rules or unwritten threats. Some believe the kitchen hierarchy preserved food safety. Others think it simply preserved fear. You don't care which is true. You care that it exists. It's during this same week that you witness your first quarantine punishment. The youngest spice boy, no older than 12, laughs during the final prayers of the evening. Just once. A tiny chuckle that escapes like steam. It's not malicious, not disrespectful. Just the harmless laugh of a child who misheard a word. By sunrise, he's gone from the dormitory. You see him again 2 days later, seated alone in the cold pantry. No fire, no blanket, a bowl of lentils beside him. His eyes are dry, but his face has changed. They call it punishment by silence. You're not told how long he must stay there. Some boys return after a day, others never. It's not about pain. It's about presence. Taking you away from the rhythm of the kitchen until you forget how to fit back in. You don't laugh anymore. Not even by accident. As the week draws to a close, the sherbet master calls you back. You think you've made another mistake. But instead, he hands you a bundle of fresh mint and says, "Slice thin, that's all." But it feels like trust. Maybe even a kind of forgiveness. You take your time, you slice gently, carefully. Each leaf curls under your knife like a sleeping crescent. You stack them in a bowl of cool water, and they float like tiny green boats, scenting the air around you with something softer than fear. It's only mint. But to you, it smells like progress. By now, you've been in the palace kitchens long enough to stop flinching at every sudden movement, but not long enough to let your guard down. Even a breath taken too casually can be misread. Your eyes still scan every corner of the room before you speak, even if it's just a whisper of "Yes, master." Today begins differently. You're called to the inner kitchens, the ones closest to the Sultan's private quarters. Few ever go there. Fewer return. A steward approaches at sunrise and hands you a folded cloth. It's deep blue, trimmed in gold thread, the mark of temporary assignment to the Has Mutfak, the Sultan's personal kitchen. No explanation. Just a nod. You feel your stomach tighten. You follow the steward down narrow corridors, past rooms you've only heard about: the honey vault, the almond room, the chilled cellar where mulberries are kept under layers of marble dust. It's colder here, darker. The air smells less like food and more like duty. In the Sultan's kitchen, the silence is absolute. You're assigned to prepare rose-scented rice. It sounds simple, but the ingredients are tracked, weighed, and measured down to the petal. One misplaced grain, and someone pays. Maybe you. You wash the rice in cool water drawn from a bronze basin that was polished at dawn. Your hands shake, but you steady them by focusing on the rhythm. Soak, swirl, drain. Soak, swirl, drain. Then comes the rosewater from a vial you're not even allowed to open yourself. The steward uncorks it for you, pours exactly 3 drops into a tiny ladle, and watches as you mix it into the pot. You can feel his eyes on your hands the entire time. While the rice simmers, you glance at the walls. They're lined with gleaming copper utensils, each placed in perfect symmetry. No one speaks. No one coughs. Even the flames seem quieter here, flickering with purpose. You serve the dish to the taster, a man whose face you never see clearly, just a shadowy figure who nods once and leaves. And that's it. No correction, no scolding. You think maybe you've done it right. But as you're cleaning your station, you knock over a small silver spoon. It clatters on the floor, not loudly, not dramatically, just a simple, metallic rattle that rolls under a shelf. You freeze. The steward looks at you. No expression, just eyes. You bend slowly, pick up the spoon, and place it back where it belongs. The steward doesn't say a word, but he makes a mark in his ledger. Just a single stroke of the pen. You don't know what it means. Back in the apprentice quarters that night, you ask one of the older boys about the ledger. He shrugs. Could mean anything, he says. A mistake. A warning. Or maybe they're just counting how often you breathe. He laughs. You don't. That's when he tells you about the bread stamp scandal. It happened years ago, or last year, depending on who you ask. A baker had been assigned to prepare the Sultan's daily bread. Each round loaf bore the Sultan's personal stamp, a delicate impression made with a carved seal, dipped in oil and pressed gently into the dough before baking. One day, the stamp went missing, or rather, it returned with a crack down the middle. The mark it left was imperfect, the outer ring slightly warped. Still, the baker used it. The bread was served. The Sultan noticed. He didn't complain, didn't send it back. But by evening, the entire baking division was reassigned. Some to janitorial work, others to silence. The broken stamp was never seen again. No one knows who dropped it. Some say the steward himself broke it and blamed the baker. Others say it cracked from age, and the baker was just the unfortunate one to use it. Historians still argue whether the punishment was symbolic or political. The boy tells you, but we all agree on one thing: don't ever touch the stamp. You nod, filing the warning deep into the folds of your memory. The next morning, you're back in the main kitchen, assigned to stew prep. It feels like a demotion, but also like safety. The pressure here is more physical than psychological. Chop, stir, slice, repeat. But then something happens. The stew for the guards' quarters, a thick mix of chickpeas, lamb, and okra is delivered late. Not cold, but not hot either. Barely warm. You didn't cook it. You didn't even carry it. But you're nearby when the overseer storms in, holding a wooden bowl like it's a severed head. Whose was this, he demands. No one answers? He walks the line slowly, stops in front of each apprentice, looks them in the eye. When he gets to you, you lower your gaze, not out of guilt, but out of habit. He pauses, then moves on. He doesn't find the culprit, or maybe he doesn't need to. Later that day, a new ritual is introduced, the kneeling apology. Whoever makes a mistake, late food, wrong spice, missed cue, must kneel in the center of the prep room for 1 full hour. Hands open, palms up, head bowed. They may continue working afterward, but no one will speak to them for the rest of the day. The first boy to kneel is the one who forgot to cover the stew pot during transit. His hands tremble, his knees press into the cold tile, his breath fogs the air in little puffs. But he does not cry. You're told to walk past him, not around him. A quiet reminder that his shame is part of your path. Later, you find yourself in the scullery scrubbing pots, grateful to have water and soap to distract your mind. But even here, you can't escape the hierarchy. The brushes are distributed by rank. The best ones, stiff bristles. Intact handles go to senior boys. You're left with a splintered piece of wood and a bucket of lemon water that stings every cut on your hands. Still, you scrub. You keep your head down, because in the kitchens of Topkapi Palace, the worst thing you can be is noticed. You begin to understand that every room in the palace kitchens has its own rhythm, its own scent, its own hierarchy of fear. The scullery, where you've now spent 2 long days, is where shame sinks and clings. It's where bruised boys are sent to disappear for a while, not as punishment, but as reminder. And reminders are everywhere, like the apron of shame you hear about it before you see it. A faded beige apron, stiff with old flour and dark stains, hangs by a rusty nail in the corner of the bread chamber. No one touches it. No one speaks of it. But when someone ruins a batch of dough or burns the edge of a loaf, that apron appears around their neck like a curse. You don't wear it. Not yet. But one morning, you walk into the prep hall to find a boy kneeling beside the ovens, wearing it shoulders hunched, sleeves rolled tightly, face pale and motionless. You don't know what he did. No one tells you. That's not how things work here. The shame is shared through silence. You glance away quickly. To look too long is to invite it closer. That same afternoon, you return to stew prep and are handed a strange task peeling boiled eggs for the Sultan's hunting party. You don't ask why this is considered high risk. You just take the tray and sit by the side corridor, gently slipping the shells from each egg with care. Halfway through, you notice one is cracked, the yolk bulging slightly, imperfect. You consider hiding it. You really do. But instead, you set it aside and inform the steward. He blinks, nods once, says nothing. That night, you don't sleep easily, unsure if honesty was rewarded or just recorded. The next day brings something different. A surprise visit from the Sanitary Inspection Board. 3 men in spotless robes and tall felt hats sweep into the kitchens mid-morning. No warning, no announcement, just the clang of polished boots and the sound of dozens of hearts sinking. They do not smile. They do not pause. Each man carries a cloth satchel, from which they pull small tools, copper spoons, parchment notebooks, and lengths of white string. The string, you learn, is used to measure floor debris. If the sweepings are too long, it means the cleaning boys haven't scrubbed properly. If the grease from the stovetops rubs off onto their gloves, the ovens are scoured again. You are not even in their path, yet you scrub your table anyway, just in case. At one station, they halt. One of the sherbet apprentices has failed to cover a tray of candied orange peels. A single fly buzzes near the edge. The inspector frowns and flicks the tray off the table with his cane. The pieces scatter across the floor, glittering like amber. The boy stands frozen. Then comes the verdict: 2 days with no sugar. For 2 days, the apprentice may not touch sweets, may not assist in the sherbet room, may not even enter. It's not a beating, but it cuts deeper than any bruise. You can see it in the way he stares at the scattered peels, jaw locked tight. Historians still argue whether such punishments were for hygiene or humiliation, an older steward says as he passes you. But I suppose the result is the same. People remember. You nod without thinking. Then immediately regret the movement a reaction can be interpreted, and interpretation leads to consequences. Still, for once, you're not the one under scrutiny, and that feels like a gift. Later that week, the kitchens receive a shipment of dried figs, and you are placed in charge of sorting them. It's peaceful, almost meditative, until a steward appears at your side and mutters, "Come with me." You don't ask where. You're led down a stone corridor, past spice jars sealed with wax and barrels of lemon brine. At the end of the hallway is a small room you've never entered before, the inventory chamber. Inside are ledgers taller than your arms are long, stacked with obsessive records of every olive, every saffron thread, every clove. At the desk sits a senior scribe, eyes magnified by thick glass lenses. He doesn't greet you. He simply lifts a wooden box and places it on the table. "Count them," he says. Inside the box are grapes. Perfect. Dried purple grapes, arranged in neat rows. You don't understand the purpose, but you begin. When you finish, he asks, "How many?" You answer. He writes the number in a ledger. Then he opens a second box, more grapes, and so it goes for hours. At first, you think it's punishment, but as the minutes pass, you realize it's something else. A test, not of counting, of endurance, of silence, of exactness. When the fourth box is finally closed, he dismisses you without a word. You don't know whether you passed. Back in the main kitchen, the rhythm feels unfamiliar after such quiet. A pot boils over near the bread room, and someone curses under their breath. A bell rings 3 times, a signal that something has gone wrong in the egg chamber. The scent of burnt milk wafts through the air, and yet the day proceeds. As always. That night, you overhear something you're not supposed to. A steward and a kitchen aide are whispering behind the spice shelves. "It's the pomegranate thing again," one says. They're still asking questions. You remember that day clearly. The spill, the silence, the fruit returned to the basket. You never spoke of it, and neither did the others, but clearly it hasn't been forgotten. You walk away quietly before they notice you. When you return to your mat, your mind hums with unspoken tension. You lie still, eyes fixed on the rafters, imagining what would happen if the questions ever reached your name. For now, they haven't. But in the kitchens of Topkapi, nothing ever stays buried for long. The next morning, there's a different kind of energy in the kitchen tents. Yes, but not the usual kind. Not fear. Something more like suspense. You notice it in the way apprentices keep glancing toward the main hall. How even the older stewards lower their voices when passing near the spice room. You hear murmurs of a trial, not an official one. Of course, nothing in Topkapi is ever official in the way you'd imagine. But you've heard enough now to know there's such a thing as a secret trial, a quiet disciplinary hearing that happens behind closed doors, usually late at night, when the rest of the palace is asleep. And this one, from what you gather, is related to the missing pomegranate incident. You've never known for certain who dropped the fruit, but you did see someone place it back in the basket. And so, apparently, did others. And as the story's been passed along in whispers and narrowed glances, that simple act has grown into something larger: mistrust, rumors of theft, and now a secret inquiry. You keep your head down and your hands moving. Stir, chop, wipe. Don't react. In the afternoon, while cleaning copper kettles, you notice a junior steward being escorted by two men in dark blue sashes. His face is unreadable. He doesn't protest. He doesn't cry. He just walks, shoulders straight, through the corridor that leads to the steward's chambers, a place you've never been and hope never to enter. No one tells you what happens there. No one ever does. But the boy doesn't return by nightfall. Instead, his cot is emptied, and his shoes are neatly set at the foot of the storage closet. Someone else will take his place in the morning. That's how the kitchen works. Silence in, silence out. Still, the shadows feel longer tonight. You go to bed with the smell of boiled lentils in your nose, and the memory of the boy's quiet footsteps echoing in your head. The next day, you're transferred again, this time to the fruit cellar, a cool, dim room beneath the kitchens where rare produce is stored behind heavy wooden doors. Only two others are assigned to the cellar, an older apprentice with a limp, and a steward who rarely speaks, preferring to communicate with gestures. Your task is simple: inspect the dates. You never knew dates could be so varied, some with wrinkled skins and honey-sweet centers, others firm and golden, with pits that split neatly down the middle. You sort them into trays with different colored cloths. A system no one explains, but everyone seems to understand. It's quiet work, meditative, and after the noise and heat of the main kitchens, the cellar feels almost safe. Until the incident with the almonds. It happens in the afternoon. You're weighing dried fruit when the steward suddenly stops what he's doing and strides to the far shelf. He lifts a covered bowl of almonds, opens it, and frowns. Too few. He mutters. The words land like a stone. He turns to the older apprentice, the one with the limp. "Did you weigh them?" he asks. The boy nods. "How many grams?" The apprentice stammers, 98 or maybe 95. It was labeled, but the steward's already left the room. What follows is fast, quiet, and final. The boy is not taken away, not that day. But he is removed from cellar duty, reassigned to what everyone knows is a punishment, the boiling room, where bones are rendered into broth and the steam never stops rising. It's hot, airless, and unrelenting. You see him later, his face slick with sweat, hands pink and raw. He doesn't look up when you pass. Historians still argue whether these changes were disciplinary or merely practical. You hear someone say later that evening, "But we know how it feels." You nod in silence. That night, sleep escapes you. Your mind replays the smallest things: a crooked stack of trays, a misplaced orange, the crack in the almond count. You wonder how many moments go unnoticed, and how many are simply waiting to be noticed later, in the dark. The sounds of the kitchen feel closer than ever: the creak of someone shifting on their mat, the clink of a copper ladle being cleaned late, the soft murmur of prayers whispered through exhaustion. And beneath it all, the silence of fear. Not loud, but thick. Not constant, but always near. By the end of the week, you're back in general prep and assigned to assist with breakfast for the Sultan's outer guard. It's a smaller team today, which means you're responsible for more than usual. Your job is to ensure the stew doesn't cool. A simple thing. Just monitor the fire under the pot. Add wood when it burns low. Keep the heat steady. But as you return from retrieving more firewood, you see that the flame has dimmed. Not out, but close. You hurry to reignite it, coaxing the embers with careful breath, using the long-handled bellows to push heat back into the base. The pot has only just begun to cool. Maybe no one will notice, but someone does. A steward walks by, pauses, and narrows his eyes at the pot. He lifts the lid, tastes the broth, waits. "You were watching this?" he asks. You nod, quietly, truthfully. He says nothing, simply gestures to a nearby bench. You sit. You remain there for 45 minutes, doing nothing. You are not allowed to stand, not allowed to assist. You are present, visible, and unhelpful, the kitchen's way of showing you what a second chance looks like, a chance wrapped in warning. Afterward, you return to your duties. The stew is still served, no one dies, but your name is recorded in the day's logbook, marked with a symbol you haven't seen before, a triangle with a line through it. You don't ask what it means. Not here, not in front of others. That night, you quietly move your mat one space to the left, just in case someone needs yours tomorrow. The next day begins in the rain. You hear it before you see it, soft taps on the tiled roof above the dormitory. The kind of rain that lingers, low and steady. No thunder, no drama, just the persistent whisper of a sky that has forgotten how to stop. It changes everything in the kitchen. The firewood is damp, the air is heavier, the ovens take longer to heat. Everyone moves slower, but no one dares acknowledge it. Even the steward's footsteps seem quieter, as if the rain has muted authority itself. You're assigned back to the spice chamber, a narrow, vaulted room lined with clay jars and bundles of dried leaves hanging from hooks. You love this room. The scent is overwhelming but strangely calming: cinnamon, saffron, cumin, cloves. Some aromas you've memorized, others still elude you. Today's task is inventory. You sit cross-legged on the floor with a slate board in your lap, a dull stick of chalk in hand, and a steward murmuring measurements as he opens each jar. Everything is recorded, even the dust, especially the dust. Midway through the morning, something odd happens. You hear voices. 2 men, speaking in low tones behind a stack of date crates. Not stewards, not apprentices. Older, confident. You can't make out the words. But one of them laughs not harshly, but with a kind of softness you haven't heard in weeks. You're about to leave it alone when one phrase rises clearly above the murmur. They'll never find it. Not in the spice room. You freeze. The steward beside you pauses too. His hand lingers over a jar of powdered cardamom. You glance at each other just a flicker, and then go back to work without a word. But now your mind won't stop spinning. What were they hiding? And more importantly, who is they? Later that day, you're sent to the herb-drying courtyard, a small open-air space usually full of baskets lined with linen, each holding sprigs of mint, parsley, and thyme left to dry under the sun. But today, there is no sun, just wet cloth and sagging stalks. You spend the afternoon gently shaking moisture off leaves, laying them out again under the awnings. It's dull work. You're alone, and it gives your thoughts too much room to grow. You think about the voices, the laughter, the phrase. You think about the steward's silent glance, the way he didn't question it and didn't explain. You think about the cracked spoon, the triangle in the ledger, the missing apprentice whose shoes were lined up too neatly, and you wonder if there are layers here you've barely begun to understand. After evening prayer, a rare announcement is made: the kitchen watch will begin tonight. No one explains why. No one asks. You've only heard of it in fragments before, when supplies go missing, or secrets swirl too loudly. For 3 nights, a rotating group of apprentices and stewards are tasked with staying awake in shifts, walking the kitchen corridors, checking storerooms and cellars for something. You don't even know what. All you know is that your name is on the list for the 2nd shift, midnight to dawn. The palace kitchens are different at night. Colder, of course, but also older somehow, as if the walls forget how modern they are, and the whole place sinks back into a deeper history, one of shadows and whispers and footsteps muffled by centuries of fear. You walk the perimeter with a lantern, its flame small and nervous in the dark. Every creak sounds deliberate. Every gust of wind through the lattice windows feels like breath. You're paired with a boy named Hassan. He doesn't speak much, but he walks confidently like someone who's been here longer than his age allows. You pass the scullery, the wine vault, the stone basin where eels are kept alive in cold water. Nothing seems out of place. Until you reach the spice room. The door is slightly ajar, not open, not wide, just enough to be wrong. You glance at Hassan. He shrugs, but his hand grips the lantern tighter. You push the door open and step inside. It's too dark to see clearly, so you raise the lantern. The shelves look untouched, the jars in place. The air smells as it always does, but on the floor, just barely visible in the low light, is a smear of something dark. Not blood, not wine. Oil. A small streak of cooking oil that glistens on the stone. Unnatural here. This room uses powders and herbs, not fat or grease. Someone has been here. Recently. You both kneel to examine it. But there's nothing else. No fingerprints, no dropped tools. Just that slick, quiet smear. Hassan marks the logbook. That's the protocol. You do not speak of it aloud. By sunrise, the kitchens return to life. But they're different now. Tighter. Like a net drawn just slightly closer around everyone's ankles. The stew boys move faster. The bakers whisper less. The sherbet master wears gloves, even during prep. And there's a steward standing at the entrance of every chamber. Watching, not helping, just watching. The next 2 days pass in careful silence. You do your work. You say nothing. You think everything. The smear, the voices, the triangle in the ledger. What are they watching for? What are you walking through that night? During your final watch, something happens you don't expect. A kitchen cat, a small black creature with a nicked ear and amber eyes darts across the spice courtyard, pausing to stare at you. You've seen her before. She lives near the waste pile, silent and unbothered. But tonight, she stops beside a barrel of flour and meows once, loud and sharp. You approach. At first, you see nothing. Then, tucked between the barrel and the wall, you spot a folded piece of cloth. You pull it out. It's a kitchen sash, deep blue, trimmed in gold. The mark of someone from the Sultan's personal kitchen. And it's stained not with food, not with blood, but with oil. You stand there for a moment, frozen, the blue and gold sash limp in your hands. It's damp with oil, and something else, a faint trace of ash, like it brushed against a cold oven or a just scraped grill. You look around the courtyard, empty, quiet. The cat has vanished, leaving you alone with the only thing no one in the palace kitchens ever wants: evidence. You shouldn't be holding this. You shouldn't have touched it. But you did. And now your fingerprints are on it. And the longer you stand here, the worse it looks. You should tuck it back. Leave it where it was. But you don't. Instead, you fold the sash tightly and hide it in your apron. You don't know why? Instinct, maybe fear, definitely. But also curiosity, that sharper, quieter kind of fear that makes your thoughts whisper louder than your heartbeat. You finish your shift with the lantern burning low, your steps slower, more deliberate. Hassan doesn't notice anything. Or if he does, he says nothing. And that's how things work here. Observation without confrontation. When the morning bell rings, you return the lantern, change out of your night robes, and slip the folded sash into the lining of your bedding. No one sees. Or, at least, no one reacts. You get no sleep that day. You lie on your mat with your eyes open, staring at the grain of the ceiling beams while the kitchens come alive again without you. Your shift was overnight, so you're excused until evening, but you can't rest. Your mind keeps replaying it. The voices, the smear of oil, the sash hidden by the flour barrel. And what it means. Someone from the Sultan's kitchen was in the spice room after dark. That's a violation of protocol, at the very least. Possibly more, depending on what they were doing. It could mean anything from reprimand to exile. Or worse. You've heard stories the butcher who tampered with wine jugs and was never seen again. The steward who accidentally served spoiled fish and was reassigned to the bathhouse, then vanished. And the quietest story of all, the cook who knew too much and said too little. Somehow, you're now standing on the edge of one of those stories, and you still haven't told anyone. You want to. You think about going straight to a steward, laying the sash on the table, explaining what you saw, but the image of your own name written in the punishment ledger stops you. That triangle, the one with the line through it, you don't even know what it meant. But what if it wasn't just a warning? What if it was a signal that you're being watched, too, by dusk? You're assigned back to bread prep, a task that once terrified you, but now feels almost soothing. The kneading, the folding, the warmth of the ovens. There's a rhythm here, a quiet heartbeat that calms your hands, if not your thoughts. You're paired with a boy named Emre. He's only a year older than you, but he's already passed the spoon test, which makes him someone to admire and, in the eyes of others, to fear a little. But Emre isn't cold. He works quickly, precisely, and with the kind of confidence that comes from not needing to prove anything. As the dough rises and the trays fill, he speaks under his breath. You saw something, didn't you? You nearly drop the dough. He doesn't look at you, just keeps working, pressing the edges of a round flatbread into perfect scallops. You've had that look, he says softly. Since night watch. You hesitate. I found something. You admit, barely above a whisper. A sash. Now he looks up briefly before returning to his task. Where spice courtyard, hidden by the flour barrel. He's silent for a moment. Then burn it. What you heard me. His voice is firmer now. Tonight, before dawn, Burn it. In the ash pit behind the scullery. You stare at him. That's evidence. You say, "It's also bait." He replies, "You don't sleep that night. You lie still, listening to every breath in the dormitory, the faint drip of rain from the eaves, the rustle of someone shifting in their sleep. And when the moon has crept halfway across the window pane, you rise, you carry the sash pressed flat between two scraps of linen, you walk barefoot to avoid sound. The kitchens are asleep mostly. A steward snores in the corner of the herb yard. The cats are out, chasing shadows. Behind the scullery, the ash pit still glows faintly from the last fire of the evening. It's always warm here, the final stop for bones, scraps, mistakes, and sometimes secrets. You kneel, you unwrap the sash slowly, then you pause, because something's been sewn into the lining, a paper, no parchment. You pull it free, trembling. It's a note, short, just a few words, written in a hand you don't recognize. Transfer complete. Next delivery under almond barrel. Await signal. You stare at it, heart pounding. Transfer, delivery, signal. It's not just theft. This is coordination, a network. You should still burn it, both the sash and the note. But instead, you tuck the parchment into your robe and drop only the fabric into the fire. It curls and blackens, the gold thread shriveling like dry grass. The smoke rises silently. And for a moment, you feel the tiniest release of weight from your chest. Then you go back to your mat and lie awake, waiting. The next morning, a new steward is introduced. No one says why. The old one, the one who handed you the rosewater ladle in the Sultan's kitchen, is simply gone. No announcement, no farewell, and the triangle with the line through it, it disappears from the ledger by the end of the day. In its place, nothing, just blank parchment, like the mark had never existed. You don't know what that means, but it feels like someone's telling you you did the right thing, or the very, very wrong one. The kitchens return to their rhythms, but not quite the same. Something shifted, and though no one says it, you can feel it in the pace of every step and the pause behind every glance. The change isn't loud. It's quieter than silence, the kind that hums just beneath normal. A steward vanishes. A new one takes his place, and yet no questions are asked. That's the most unsettling part. Everyone adapts instantly, as if the walls have taught them what not to notice. But you notice. Of course you do. And now, you're not just watching, you're waiting. You still have the parchment, the one sewn into the sash. You've read it so many times you could recite it from memory transfer complete. Next delivery under almond barrel. Await signal. You haven't told anyone, not even Emre. He told you to burn the sash, not examine it. He probably assumed you did just that. And maybe you should have. But now it's too late. Because when someone leaves a message in a hidden lining, they're expecting someone else to find it. And you weren't that someone. You begin checking the almond barrel, casually, quietly, never too often. Once in the morning, as part of normal inventory. Again in the evening, when sweeping the floor. Always the same result, nothing. Until the fourth day. You lift the lid, and there, tucked between the bottom slats and the stone floor, is another slip of parchment folded tight, stained slightly with oil. You slide it into your sleeve and walk away before anyone sees. Back in the dormitory, under your blanket, you open it. It says delay 3 days. New route, same crate, confirm with clove pouch. You stare at the message for a long time. Clove pouch. You know where the cloves are kept top shelf of the spice wall, behind the saffron tins. If this is real, then someone, maybe more than one, is using the kitchen's inventory system to smuggle things, or pass messages, or worse. And now you're tangled in it. You never asked for this, but you also haven't walked away. That night, Emre finds you near the bread ovens. You didn't burn it all, did you? He says it with no emotion, but not without weight. You hesitate. I found a note. You admit, I figured. He replies, they wouldn't use a sash for nothing. You wait, expecting anger or warning, but Emre just stretches dough across a baking sheet and says, so, what are you going to do? I don't know. Then decide soon, he says. Because the kitchen has its own memory, and it doesn't forget who touches what. The next morning, you climb the stool to reach the clove pouch. You open it slowly, pretending to measure for stew mix. Inside, folded with careful precision, is another note: inspection coming, adjust scale readings, distract ledger clerk. This time, you don't wait, you go straight to Emre. He reads the note once and shakes his head. It's bigger than I thought. Who do we tell? No one. You stare at him. What do you mean, no one? There's no safe steward, he says. Not anymore. You report it, you disappear, like the last one. He's right. You know he is. But that means the entire kitchen might be compromised, not just one or two cooks sneaking out almonds or figs. There's coordination, messaging, a whole structure within the structure. You're not sure what they're stealing, or smuggling, or moving, but you know they're doing it with precision, and that means danger. You and Emre decide on a simple plan: delay the message. You remove the note from the clove pouch and write a new one in its place. Message received, delay acknowledged. Stand by for further instruction. You fold it exactly the way the others were folded. You dust it with clove powder and return it to the pouch. You wipe your hands, you walk away, and you wait. 3 days pass. Nothing happens, no alarms, no questioning, no new removals. But the mood remains strained, not with the sharpness of fear, but the dull press of anticipation. Everyone seems to know something is coming, even if they don't know what. You begin seeing more stewards in the corridors. Not new ones, familiar faces, but too many. Too often. They pass in pairs. Not alone. They stop at storage doors. They whisper to one another behind water urns. And then one evening, the kitchen receives word a full inventory review is scheduled at midnight. This never happens. Not at night. Not with no notice. You and Emre exchange a glance. You don't speak. You don't need to. It's the signal. They're doing it tonight. You're not on inventory duty, but you ask to assist, citing your speed at weighing and your knowledge of dried goods. The steward shrugs and waves you in. He's too busy organizing logbooks to question you. At midnight, the review begins. You take your place near the almond barrels, clipboard in hand. You count carefully. Everything is in order. Then, without being seen, you check beneath the lowest barrel. Another note. Go now. Cellar route. Crate 14. Your chest tightens. Crate 14 is in the cold cellar, one of the oldest and least visited parts of the palace kitchens. It's used for preserving delicate imports: mulberries, figs, sometimes blocks of ice hauled from the mountains. And now, apparently, something else. You don't act immediately. You wait until the team moves to the next station. Then you slip out. The path to the cellar is long, narrow, dimly lit. You take a candle from the wall sconce and move quickly but softly, your feet remembering how to be invisible. Inside the cellar, the air is colder than you remember, and the silence thicker. You find crate 14. You kneel. You open it. At first, all you see are jars of pickled garlic and pressed quince. But beneath them, wrapped in burlap, is a scroll tube. You lift it. It's heavy and unmarked. You don't open it. You don't need to, because just as you turn to leave, you hear the one sound you weren't prepared for. Footsteps. Approaching. You freeze, scroll tube in hand, breath caught mid-inhale. The footsteps are deliberate, not hurried, not cautious. Whoever they belong to knows where they're going and probably who they expect to find. You blow out your candle. Darkness swallows everything. You back into the corner behind a stack of mulberry crates, your fingers tightening around the tube, the cold wood pressing into your chest like a brand. The footsteps echo louder now, shoes scraping against the stone with a rhythm that sounds almost bored. Then they stop. You hear breathing close, just on the other side of the crates. Whoever it is, they haven't seen you yet. Then a low exhale, a pause, the rustle of burlap being lifted. You don't move. A match is struck. The flicker of a lantern opens a narrow beam of yellow light, enough for you to see the silhouette of a tall figure in steward's robes. His back turned to you, kneeling in front of crate 14. His hands dig through the jars. Methodical. He's looking for the scroll, the one you're holding. You think of stepping forward, confronting him, demanding an explanation. But that's a good way to disappear. Instead, you watch. After a few moments, the steward rises, slowly. He doesn't seem alarmed, just unsatisfied. The crate is recovered with burlap, the lantern lowered, the match extinguished, and he walks away. You wait until his footsteps fade completely before you move. 1 second, 2, 3. Then you slide the scroll tube beneath your sash and slip out the side passage into the corridor. Your legs are shaking, but you keep walking. You don't go straight to the dormitory. That would be reckless. Instead, you head to the scullery, where the night fire still glows low under the ash basin. You stir it gently, add a scrap of wood, and pretend to tend it while your thoughts race. The scroll is still with you. But what now? You can't return it. He'll know it was missing. Someone will. You can't open it here, too risky, too exposed. You wait another 10 minutes, then head to your mat, wrapping the scroll in your apron and sliding it beneath the straw bedding. Only then, lying flat in the dark, do you let your breath release. Emre finds you at sunrise. Did you go? He asks softly. You nod once. Anything, you reach into the mat and hand him the scroll. He lifts it with both hands, testing the weight. He doesn't open it yet. We'll read it together. He says, after the midday bell, when the kitchens break for rest, you and Emre slip into the herb-drying courtyard. No one's here today, the rain has returned, soft but steady, making the air too damp for drying anything. You crouch behind the stacked mint crates, unwrapping the scroll. Emre cracks the wax seal gently, then unrolls the parchment. It's not what you expect. There are no maps, no smuggled correspondence, no lists of stolen goods. Instead, it's a ledger, a shipping record, column after column of numbers, dates, and codes, most of it meaningless to you until Emre taps a line with his finger. Here, he says. The entry reads, Shipment, Naga 342 Kios, Topkappa 3 barrels, figs, 1 crate, stone, approved, K. Stone, you ask. That's not kitchen stock. Emre mutters. Not unless we're pickling rocks. And E.K. Could be initials, could be code. He scans further. The word stone appears 4 more times. Once paired with honey, once with flour, always with an approval stamp. Always routed through the kitchens. You look at each other. Then Emre whispers, It's not just food. You already knew. But now, there's proof. Someone is moving something, maybe jewels, maybe relics, maybe contraband disguised in food shipments, using the kitchens, using you, and the tube you found was supposed to continue the chain. If you'd never found the sash, it would have gone unnoticed. If you hadn't switched the message, it would be in someone else's hands now. You fold the scroll again. Emre tucks it beneath his robe. We need to lock this away, he says, and decide what we're doing. That evening, the kitchens are restless. A delivery arrives late, crates from the docks, brought up through the west gate. You recognize the seal Chios, just like the ledger. You glance at Emre, and he nods. You're assigned to unload vegetables. You go, but not before slipping away to the inventory room, opening the salt chest, and hiding the scroll tube beneath the third layer of rock salt. Emre covers it again, smooths it flat. It's hidden, for now. But the kitchen has noticed something. You can tell. The stewards are more alert. The overseer inspects bread trays himself. The dormitory is cleaned twice, not for hygiene, but for signs. And that night, just before lights out, a new rule is announced. All apprentices must submit to robe checks. Immediately. The line forms outside the dormitory. You're near the middle, one by one. Boys step forward, arms out. Their robes are patted down, hems shaken, cuffs turned inside out. Some are sent back, some are held. When it's your turn, your pulse drums in your ears. You lift your arms. The steward pats you down, finds nothing. You're cleared. Emre isn't. They stop him, whisper something, lead him aside. Your heart plunges. But 15 minutes later, he returns. Pale, quiet, but free. In the dark. You whisper. What happened? They asked about a scroll. What did you say? I said I've seen none. And I haven't. It's true, you've been the one carrying it. You don't sleep. The next morning, the kitchens are silent. No punishments are announced. No shoes are missing. But a new steward stands at the spice room entrance. You don't know his name, but he smiles too much. And he's wearing blue and gold. You avoid looking at the new steward, but his eyes find you anyway. He greets everyone with warmth, too much warmth. A steady smile that never fades. A voice that feels like it's been rehearsed. You've seen stewards come and go, but this one walks like he owns every tile beneath his boots. He speaks the way someone does when they've already memorized the answers to questions no one's asked yet. He spends the first morning observing the spice room. Doesn't give orders. Doesn't adjust anything. Just watches. You notice he takes notes, tiny ones. In a slim leather book he palms like a card trick. You pretend not to notice. But you know he's noticed you. That afternoon, he calls your name. Not loudly. Not in front of others. Just a quiet request as you carry a tray of dried citrus into the herb courtyard. Walk with me, he says. You don't refuse. You can't. You follow him through the east corridor, past the cooling troughs and down the side steps toward the root cellar. It's cooler here, quieter. The air tinged with damp wood and drying shallots. I've heard you're attentive, he says. Still smiling, focused, quiet, all valuable traits. You nod, and curious, he adds. That one lands heavier. I need a few eyes. He continues. Discreet ones, apprentices who know when to speak, and more importantly, when not to. You say nothing. He stops walking and turns to face you fully. We keep this place running because people know their roles. Don't misunderstand me, loyalty is rewarded. Deeply, but so is insight, especially when delivered at the right time. There's a pause. Have you seen anything unusual lately? The question is casual, almost playful, but the silence that follows it is not. You shake your head. He studies your face for a moment longer than necessary, then nods, patting your shoulder once with a hand that feels too practiced. That's what I thought, he says. Good lad. He turns and walks back toward the kitchens. You stand there a moment, throat dry, skin cold. You've been marked. You tell Emre that night, while rinsing copper bowls in the scullery. He asked if I've seen anything. Emre exhales. Then he knows you know something. What do we do? We don't blink. Easier said than done. The following days feel like walking on polished ice. You say the right things. You do your work. You answer every call with a bowed head and a steady hand. But the steward's presence never softens. He moves through the kitchens with precision, stopping to ask just enough questions to remind everyone that he's listening. And every evening, the robe checks continue. You and Emre double-lock the salt chest with a rope knot that only you two know how to tie. The scroll remains hidden. But for how long, then one night, after evening prayer, a message arrives. Written on the underside of a bread tray. Just 3 words. Crate, move, now. There's no signature, no instructions, but the handwriting is the same as the notes you found before, angular, tight, clipped. It's not just a message, it's a command. They've realized the scroll hasn't moved. They're growing nervous. Emre reads it and frowns. We can't delay much longer. If we move it now, you whisper, they'll be watching. If we don't, they'll know it's us. So you decide, you'll move the scroll, but not to deliver it, to expose it. You and Emre make your plan the next morning. It has to happen during the midday bread transfer, when crates from storage are temporarily relocated to make room for warm loaves cooling on the central tables. It's the only time of day the inventory room goes unguarded for more than a minute. At precisely the 12th bell, Emre draws the attention of the clove steward by accidentally spilling a sack of crushed nutmeg across the hallway. The smell is overwhelming. The dust clouds the air. You slip away. You reach the salt chest, undo the knot, lift the lid. Your hands are shaking, but your movements are practiced now. You lift the scroll tube, wrap it in linen, and tuck it into your sash. Then you exit, cutting through the outer kitchen yard and circling around to the accounting hall. That's where the grand ledger clerk resides, the one person no steward can intimidate. He's ancient, half-blind, and smells like ink and burnt paper. But his records are absolute. He's the only one who reports directly to the palace treasurer. You knock on the frame of his office. He grunts, doesn't look up. I have something that should be part of the kitchen log. You say, still no movement. Then you place the scroll tube on his desk. And wait, finally, he lifts his head, peers at the scroll, sniffs. What's this shipping record? Not on today's manifest? He frowns. Who gave it to you? I found it, you say. A pause. Then he opens it. His eyes scan. Slow at first, then faster. His mouth tightens. Leave, he says. You don't ask again. You return to the kitchens with your stomach curled into a knot. Emre meets you by the pastry oven. Did it work? I don't know. You say, by evening, word begins to spread. Quietly, through glances, through rumors, there's been an audit, a real one. Not just among the apprentices, but in the master kitchens, in the delivery logs, in the shipping docks. 2 stewards are removed. Quietly, no explanations, just missing the next day. Their names struck from the chore boards, their voices erased, and the new steward, the smiling one, is reassigned, not removed, not punished, just relocated, which, in Topkapi, is sometimes worse. Historians still argue, Emre mutters later, whether these cleanups were justice or just clever politics. You nod, but you know what you saw. You lived it. The next week is quieter than any before. The kitchens settle into something resembling calm. The robe checks stop. The night watch is suspended. You are reassigned to bread permanently this time. A soft post, a sign that, for now, you're safe, but nothing is ever forgotten. Not in Topkapi. And one evening, as you shape loaves in the golden glow of the oven, a note appears beside your bowl, folded neatly, unmarked. You open it. Just one line. There are other crates. The note weighs almost nothing. But in your hand, it feels heavy, heavier than the scroll, heavier than the sash, heavier than the endless nights of silence you've already survived. There are other crates. That's all it says. No name, no signature, not even a symbol. Just those 4 words, like a whisper pressed into paper. You fold it quickly and tuck it into your apron, pretending nothing's changed. But everything has. Again. You'd thought it was over or close to it. 2 stewards removed, a secret scroll exposed. The night watches finally ended. The kitchen had begun to breathe again, cautiously. You'd returned to baking, shaping warm loaves in a rhythm that soothed the corners of your nerves. But the note proved something you were afraid to believe. It wasn't one scheme. It was part of a system. And you've only tugged at the edge of it. The others are still hidden. And someone else knows that you know. You tell Emre the next morning, over honeyed yogurt and flatbread in the corner of the herb courtyard. No one else is nearby. Just the soft murmur of boiling stock in the distance and the rhythmic swish of brooms against stone. He reads the note and says nothing for a long time. Then, "They're testing you." "What do you mean?" "They could have said more. Named a crate, named a person. But they didn't. They want to see what you'll do." Waimi Emre shrugs. "Because you found the last one? Because you didn't fold? Because, whether you wanted it or not, you're in this now. You hate how right that feels. You begin observing again, not snooping, just watching, noting what moves, what doesn't, who touches what and when. You pay attention to schedules, which stewards switch duties, which crates linger longer in the holding chambers than they should. And soon, a pattern begins to form. Every 3rd night, a set of empty jars is returned to the herb chamber far too early, long before they could have been used. You see the same steward carry them in, each time a narrow-shouldered man with a limp, always late to roll call, never without a ladle tucked into his sash. You don't know his name, but you remember him from the cellar briefly, back when the almond count went awry. And there's something else. Crate 27. It arrives with bulk shipments, flour, lentils, dates, but never gets logged. You notice it once, twice, then again, always in transit, always being moved, but never opened in the presence of stewards. You ask Emre about it. He frowns. Crate 27 isn't even on the board. Look, he's right. The number's been scraped off the inventory slate as if it never existed. You glance at the kitchens, at the boys working quietly, the stewards reading silently by lamplight, and you feel it again. That pulse beneath the surface. That second kitchen, the invisible one. You decide to follow Crate 27. It takes 3 days of waiting. Watching. Timing your cleaning shifts near the loading area. Pretending to scrub spilled chickpea sacks while tracking crate movement with your peripheral vision. Finally, on the 3rd night, it happens. Crate 27 is wheeled into the herb courtyard after dinner. It's left beside the mint barrels, awaiting sorting. No one touches it for nearly 20 minutes. Then the steward with the limp appears. You wait. He looks both ways, kneels, opens the side latch. You catch just a glimpse, not herbs, not lentils, parchment, sealed in wax, several scrolls, wrapped tight in oilcloth. He lifts one, places it in a side satchel, closes the crate, and leaves. You step forward just enough to see the wax seal still imprinted on the edge of the parchment bundle. It bears the mark of the Imperial Library. These aren't just smuggled goods. They're stolen records, possibly history itself. That night, you don't sleep. Neither does Emre. We have to tell someone, you say, to who he answers. The Grand Ledger Clerk. He won't act twice. Not without more. Then we get more. The next day, you swap your lunch shift to get near the scribe's hall. It's a restricted corridor near the eastern wing, where official kitchen reports are copied and stored. You offer to deliver dried figs. No one questions you. No one ever does when your hands are full and your head is down. Inside, The walls are lined with scrolls and ledgers. The ink smell is sharp, almost bitter. You slip a marked parchment from your sleeve, a fake, aged and sealed by Emre the night before, and slide it into the stack being prepared for review. It's a trap, a test. The note inside reads, "Who reviews these, who signs them out, crate 27. If someone's watching the movement of scrolls, they'll see this one, and if they act on it, they'll reveal themselves. You just have to wait." 2 nights later, the parchment is gone from the log stack. But it's not signed out, it's just missing. No one speaks of it. No one logs it as misplaced. It simply vanishes. And that's the signal. Whoever took it, they knew it wasn't real. And they moved to cover it up. But they did so quietly, and without procedure. Now you know they know, and the circle tightens. You and Emre meet in the oven yard just before dawn. The fires are dying down. The loaves are cooling on wooden racks. You speak in soft breaths between shifts of silence. "We flush them," Emre says. "How we circulate a false shipment notice. Something too valuable to ignore. A relic, a coin vault. Something just believable enough. And the crate. We pick a real one. Fill it with nothing. Watch who moves. It's dangerous. But so is everything now." By evening, the forgery is ready, a scroll bearing a false notice of incoming mint from Damascus, packed in a false crate lined with saffron to mask any scent. Signed with the initials E.K., the same code from the original scroll. You place it in crate 34. You leave it near the pastry ovens, an unusual place. Deliberately odd. Easy bait. Then you wait. You're not alone. You've asked 2 others to help now. Quiet boys. Trusted. One posted by the holding door, one by the herb hallway, and you watch from the balcony above the bread chamber, tucked into the rafters. At midnight, the figure arrives. Hooded, not limping, not the steward you expected. Someone else. Someone faster. He kneels, lifts the crate lid, takes the scroll, and walks toward the west corridor. Emre whispers beside you. "He's not one of ours." You nod. And for the first time since this began, you start to wonder how many of them there really are. You climb down from the rafters in silence. Emre is already moving, slipping down the side stairs that lead toward the western corridor, shadowing the figure who took the scroll. You stay back, not because you're afraid, but because one pair of footsteps is less noticeable than 2, and right now, stealth is your only weapon. The hooded figure moves quickly. He's not unfamiliar with the layout. He bypasses the main thoroughfare and cuts through the olive cellar, a narrow passage only experienced kitchen workers know. That's when it hits you. This isn't some outside thief or opportunist. This is someone inside, someone who's been watching, waiting, maybe even helping move these other crates from the very beginning. You reach the corridor bend just in time to see Emre reappear. He doesn't speak until he's sure no one else is within earshot. He went into the stone stairwell, the servants' side. That connects to the archive tower. Your stomach sinks. The archive tower. The one place in the palace kitchens that connects directly to the royal scribes' offices and more dangerously to the storage levels below the Sultan's personal chambers. It's not a place apprentices are ever supposed to go, not even for cleaning. You've always assumed it was off limits because of its importance. Now you realize it's because of what's inside. Emre glances over his shoulder. If they're using the archive tower, this isn't just kitchen level anymore. You nod slowly. It means the palace itself is compromised. That thought lands with a weight neither of you can shake. If this network runs beyond the kitchens, if it stretches into the clerks, the scribes, the archivists, then it's not smuggling. It's espionage, possibly treason. The next 2 days pass like wading through fog. Everything feels normal, and that's the most terrifying part. The bread still bakes. The stews still boil. Apprentices still get scolded for crooked cuts and cracked porcelain bowls. But underneath it all, you sense the kitchen holding its breath. Then, on the third day, the Sultan's personal steward pays a visit. He never does that. His presence is like thunder, silent, but impossible to ignore. No one knows his name. They just call him the Gray Robe. He moves through the kitchen like smoke, trailing 2 royal guards who say nothing, carry nothing, and make no sound when they step. He doesn't speak to you. He doesn't speak to anyone. He simply observes. His eyes scan each boy, each corner, each stack of dishes. You wonder if he already knows. If he's here because of you. That night, Emre corners you in the dormitory, his face drawn with sleeplessness. "I think it's time," he says. "For what?" "For ending it." You don't ask what he means. You already know. It's not enough to hide scrolls, or reroute crates, or feed fakes to shadows. Whoever's behind this, the real head won't stop unless exposed fully. You need to find them. And to do that, you need to enter the archive tower. It takes another 4 days to plan. The access point is through the western stairwell, which is patrolled irregularly but always guarded by one thing: the waitkeeper, an older servant who logs and certifies every bundle, basket, and box carried through the stair to ensure accurate records. He's not malicious, just meticulous, and his presence makes sneaking anything through nearly impossible. But there's a crack. Every 7th day, he leaves his post precisely at dusk to join prayer in the East Chamber. It's a ritual. Quiet. Undocumented. But you've seen it. You choose that moment. You prepare a crate filled with stale loaves long expired, but still serviceable as a disguise. Beneath them, you tuck in clean robes, a hidden satchel, and a copy of the scroll Emre had fabricated weeks ago. Not to deliver. To bait. The night comes. You and Emre carry the crate together, moving with purpose but not speed fast enough to seem busy, slow enough not to raise questions. The waitkeeper has just left. The stairs are unguarded. You descend. The air grows cooler with every step. The stone walls sweat with old condensation. Torchlight flickers dimly against iron sconces, and the silence grows deeper, heavier, more absolute. You reach the bottom landing. A small door waits ahead, carved with the insignia of the Imperial Library, a crescent, a book, and a flame. Emre pulls it open. What you see makes you stop. The room is vast, much larger than you expected. Not dusty and forgotten, but organized. Shelves of scrolls, satchels, and tightly packed boxes line the walls. But more shocking are the people, not just kitchen stewards, but scribes, guards, even one man in palace robes seated at a table, reviewing a parchment with a seal you don't recognize. They're cataloging something. A system. You realize then this isn't just a black market. It's an alternate archive, a shadow ledger of everything that moves through the palace food, messages, goods, names. This is a second record. Emre breathes beside you. One of the men looks up, and everything stops. You're spotted, but instead of sounding an alarm, the man stands, calmly. "You've come far for bakers," he says, voice even. "I suppose I should be impressed." He gestures to the others, who make no move to stop you. "We've been watching you, of course, since the first sash." You swallow. "Why? Because curiosity is the only true loyalty," he says. "It means you're not asleep. It means you might be useful." Emre shifts slightly. Useful to what the man smiles not kindly, not cruelly. To knowing the truth about this empire. He steps closer. "We don't work against the Sultan. We serve him better than his own scribes. We preserve what others edit, hide what others erase. You want to say something. Anything. but he raises a hand. You don't have to decide now. You've seen it. That's enough. For now. He turns away. The others return to work. And somehow, the door behind you opens on its own as if inviting you to leave. You do. Back in the kitchens, nothing changes, but everything has. Because now you understand. There are 2 kitchens, 2 sets of scrolls, 2 truths, and you're walking the line between both. You return to the kitchens before dawn, moving silently through corridors that now feel thinner, more transparent, like a veil has been lifted and behind it was not darkness, but something worse, calculated structure. You say nothing to the stewards. No one stops you. You and Emre slip back into your dormitory without raising suspicion. Your hands still smell faintly of old ink and candle soot. Your knees ache from crouching beside crates not meant to be touched. But your mind has never been louder. You lie on your mat, staring up at the rafters. You replay the man's words again and again. We preserve what others edit, hide what others erase. It didn't sound like defiance. It sounded like conviction. And somehow, that's what unsettled you most. They weren't stealing. They were archiving. Not treasures. Not secrets. Truths. Emre doesn't sleep either. You can hear him breathing across the room. Not heavily, not restfully. Just enough to remind you you're not alone. At midday, you return to bread duty. The ovens crackle. The dough rises. Everything moves as it always has. Only now. You notice more. A boy rolls flour sacks into the scullery, the same boy you saw near the spice courtyard 2 weeks ago, pretending to sweep. A steward counts olives aloud, but double taps one jar as if signaling something. A parchment crate sits unattended for 30 seconds too long near the northern pantry. None of it means anything, but all of it means something. You realize this network, this alternate archive, isn't a rogue cell operating in secret. It's woven into the routine. And maybe it always has been. You start to see the structure invisible yet exact. There are codes in foot patterns, signals in food placement. Even the order in which spoons are hung tells someone something. And all of it operates under one unspoken rule: never get caught. Not because punishment is severe, but because exposure would end the balance. Emre finds you that evening by the yeast barrels. They'll ask, he says, eventually, about loyalty. You nod, I know. What will you say? You don't answer right away, because you haven't decided. It's not that you want to protect them, or betray them. You just understand them. And that's dangerous. Understanding is a kind of gravity. It pulls you in. But the truth is, part of you wants to know more. The next day, a message appears on your cutting board. Just a strip of parchment, curled slightly at the corners, tucked beneath a sprig of thyme. Bread seller, tonight? You burn the message after reading it. You don't ask Emre to come with you. Not because you don't trust him, but because if this is an invitation, it's addressed only to you. That night, long after the others have fallen asleep and the coals in the ovens have settled into a quiet red glow. You rise and cross the courtyard barefoot. The bread cellar is cool and dry, its walls thick with flour dust and the ghosts of 1,000 batches of dough. You expect to find the same man from the archive tower, or one of the scribes, but instead, waiting in the shadows near the shelves of unused proofing trays, is a boy. Not older than you, perhaps younger. You recognize him from the vinegar chamber, always quiet, always watching. He speaks first. They want to meet. Who the ones who decide? The real archivists. The circle. You blink. When 3 nights from now, you'll be told the place. You'll come alone. Why me? He shrugs. Because you didn't break the first time. And because you put the scroll where it couldn't be erased. You stare at him, he adds. We all saw that. The real scribes. They never would have known without you. You nod slowly. What happens if I say no? He doesn't smile. Then you go back to kneading bread and pretending. He disappears into the corridor. 3 nights later, the signal comes a green ribbon tied around the last ladle on the eastern hook wall, a sign Emre taught you was used during the old winter to indicate no steward present. The meeting is set. You're led by another boy. You don't speak. You don't know his name. He walks ahead of you through the water tunnels beneath the eastern garden, through carved stone passages older than the palace itself, past rusted chains and alcoves filled with sealed amphorae. The smell is different here, less of food, more of earth and memory. You enter a domed room lit only by 3 floating lanterns. There are 5 figures waiting, all wear standard servant robes. But you know these are not ordinary apprentices. These are the ones who curate the alternative record, the invisible library, the circle. No names are exchanged. One of them, a tall girl with a scar down her cheek, steps forward. You've seen both sides now, she says, the ledgers they show, and the ones they hide. You nod. We don't ask for oaths. Not yet. Only one question. She steps closer. Her voice softens. Do you believe the truth matters? Even if it never leaves these walls, it's not a trap. It's not even persuasion. It's an invitation to believe in something bigger than the kitchens, the crates, the scrolls. You take a slow breath. Yes. You say. The girl nods once. Then she lifts a satchel from the floor and hands it to you. Inside is a bound stack of parchment marked with the imperial seal but annotated in red ink. Margins filled with corrections, crossed-out passages, notes that reshape entire entries. You open the first page. It's a rewritten recipe log for the Sultan's private table, but with annotations exposing which ingredients were supplied by foreign merchants who also happened to hold influence in court decisions. It's a record of subtle power, food as leverage, dish by dish, trade route by trade route. You look up, and the circle is watching you not for answers, but for comprehension. And you understand? This has never been about smuggling. It's about memory, about keeping the truth alive even if no one hears it, even if it never escapes the kitchen walls. You return to the kitchens before dawn, carrying the satchel pressed close to your side, your fingers still tingling with the weight of what it contains. Not jewels, not gold, but something far more dangerous in a palace built on hierarchy and illusion, unedited memory. You hide the satchel where the circle instructed, not in your bedding or beneath your clothes, but inside the hollow leg of an unused spice rack in the northern storeroom. No one ever checks there. Not even the ledger clerks. The leg is cracked at the base, packed with cinnamon dust so fine it clogs the air if you stir it too quickly. It's perfect. You wash your hands 3 times before returning to the bread station. But no amount of water washes away the shift you feel in your body. You move like yourself. Speak like yourself. Answer stewards with the same bow you always have. But inside, you're no longer a servant. You're a witness. And everything has changed. Over the next week, the circle sends no messages. You don't expect any? That's the rule. You return to routine rising at dawn, kneading until your wrists ache, counting lentils in perfect handfuls, slicing figs so cleanly the seeds fall like dust. You speak when spoken to. You laugh, once when another apprentice spills salt on a steward's shoes. No one suspects. But you see them now, not just the figures you met in the cellar, but others, the outer edges of the circle. Their movements are subtle, but recognizable if you know what to look for. A clove pouch tied upside down. A water jug tilted slightly east on the shelf. 3 ladles laid left to right with their handles overlapping. Signals. like a second language spoken without words. You and Emre don't discuss it often. When you do, it's brief, coded. Not because you fear each other, but because you both know that the more said aloud, the more fragile this balance becomes. Besides, the circle has made it clear trust is earned in silence. One morning, a new shipment arrives from the southern docks. Nothing unusual. Crates of grain, barrels of vinegar, a small batch of pistachios marked for the Sultan's personal confectioner. You're assigned to assist in cataloging. You roll your sleeves, lift lids, mark quantities. Then you find it, a jar of honey. Normal on the outside, but the seal is wrong, too new, too smooth. It hasn't been handled. It's been planted. You recognize the code burned into the wax. W3L27, W3 Western Storeroom, Shelf 3. L27, Ledger Entry 27. A signal. You wait until evening. When the kitchen quiets and the storeroom is empty, you retrieve the jar. Inside, tucked just beneath the wax lining, is a sliver of parchment wrapped around a string of cloves. The royal inkmaker falsified 8 scribe records, 2 removed, 1 returned. Confirm contents of archive drawer 12B. You read it twice. Then you burn it, cloves and all. The next day, you visit the herb corridor under the pretense of collecting time. The ink clerk passes you on the stairs. You make no eye contact. Later, you find the time to slip into the archive wing. Clean linens over your shoulder. You've memorized the passage to drawer 12B. It's behind a curtain of drying saffron-rich red strands that blind the eyes and perfume the air enough to distract anyone nearby. Inside the drawer, a single scroll. Short, sealed in black wax. You don't open it. You don't need to. You count the strings tied around its middle. 3 knots, 1 loose. That's the confirmation. You reseal the drawer. Walk out. Another thread added to the web. Weeks pass. Slowly, softly, but never emptily. And then the circle sends another message. This time, it comes not by note or hidden seal, but through Emre. He finds you in the scullery, where steam clouds the air and no one listens too closely. They want a copy made, he says. Of the baker's tax scroll, your throat tightens, the royal one. He nods. It's a minor record, a supply log, but someone altered it. The original is gone. The version now says the Sultan's kitchens used twice as much grain last season as they did. And why, he looks at you. Because someone's using the surplus to fund something else. And the kitchens are their shadow. You don't ask what. You don't want to guess. Instead, that night, you retrieve the tax log from its place beneath the linen shelves. You spend 2 hours alone in the weighing chamber, tracing each line onto fresh parchment with a charcoal stylus. You copy everything, even the errors. Especially the errors. Then you slide your copy into a proofing tray bound for the storage oven, 3rd shelf from the top, behind a loaf that will never be served. The circle collects it before dawn. And once again, the kitchen moves on. Until one evening, the balance breaks. It begins with the steward's cough, a loud one, too loud. He coughs twice more during dinner service, just as the serving trays are being moved. The sound echoes strangely, like a call. Emre notices first. That's not his cough. You turn. Something shifts in the room, a pause between ladle strokes, a missed command, a tray delivered 2 steps early, then movement. 3 guards enter the prep hall. Quiet, but not discreet. They ask for a name, not yours. Emre's. You move instinctively, stepping between him and the guard, but Emre's hand on your arm stops you. I'll go, he says. It's better that way. They lead him out. No shackles, no shouting, just a silent departure. Like so many others before. But this one is different, because you know where he's going, and you know you're next. That night, a circle courier visits your cot. She's no older than 12, dressed like any other flower runner, but in her palm is a scrap of dried pear with a number carved into it. 16. You nod. The 16th chamber. You dress silently. Leave before curfew. Duck through the western garden past the koi pool and behind the lime kiln. You reach the 16th chamber, a storage vault rarely used since the winter floods 2 years ago. Inside, Emre waits. Alive, safe, changed. They're moving everything, he says. The archive's being dismantled, for now. Why too much visibility? Too many questions? You nod, and us. They offered us a choice. You already know what he means. Leave the kitchens, or stay and vanish more thoroughly than any punishment ever could. Historians still argue, Emre says quietly. Whether the truth survives if no one speaks it aloud. You stare at him and say, it only has to survive long enough to be found again. He smiles. Not for joy, but for understanding. By morning, the kitchens know. They don't say it, of course. No one speaks Emre's name. No one asks where he went, or why his mat is empty, or why the apron he always folded in the same precise square is now gone. But they know, and they know that you know. You keep your eyes low and your hands moving. The dough is heavier today, the flour slightly damp from the night's humidity, but your fingers work with practiced rhythm. You shape loaves with the same patience as ever. You nod when the steward passes. You accept the ladle. You check the firewood. You clean the basin. But inside, everything is quiet. Too quiet. You miss Emre's voice, that dry humor. That way he asked questions without needing answers. You miss the feeling that someone else saw the invisible world the same way you did. Still, the circle has not gone dark. 2 days after Emre's disappearance, a small fig appears on your chopping board. It's not fresh. It's dried. Torn slightly at the stem, a tiny cut in the skin shaped like a downward-pointing triangle. You know what it means? Relocation. The circle isn't gone. It's shifting, retreating into deeper corridors, older tunnels, safer ledgers. You wait, as instructed, and on the 4th night, a note arrives tucked into the flour bag. Cellar oven. Noon. It's not a place anyone uses. Not anymore. The old brick hearth at the far end of the root cellar hasn't been lit in years. It was built too low and smoked out the upper corridor every time it was stoked. But for a message, for a handover, it's perfect. At noon, you carry a tray of stale loaves into the cellar. No one stops you, they assume you're discarding them, feeding the courtyard birds or delivering them for reuse in broth. You pass down the narrow stairs and turn into the chamber. Dust coats the hearth. Spiderwebs glitter like threads of glass between the soot-black bricks. You crouch by the oven mouth. Inside a parcel wrapped in waxed cloth, no larger than a loaf of rye. You pull it out, untie it. Inside is not parchment. It's a map, hand-drawn, faint lines, uneven ink, but detailed. You recognize sections of the palace, not the visible ones, but the hidden ones, the waste tunnels, the water ducts, the crawl spaces between stone and smoke, and marked in red 7 small circles. You trace one with your finger. It's the corridor behind the grain room, where the tiles shift slightly underfoot. Another aligns with a hollow beneath the dormitory. But the last, the 7th, is in the wall behind the Sultan's audience chamber. You sit still for a long time, listening to the silence. They're not just preserving records anymore. They're building a route, a path, something bigger. That night, you enter the grain room and test the tile. It lifts. Beneath it is only darkness. But you can feel the air moving faint, slow, like breath through a cracked door. You replace the tile, straighten your apron, and return to your chores. But your mind stays in the tunnels. The next morning, the palace holds a celebration. You're told nothing of its purpose, only that more food must be prepared. double rations, silver trays polished, sweets infused with saffron and garnished with sugared almonds. The kitchens are chaos. And in chaos, movement becomes easier. You slip away during the sugar boil, when the air is thick with steam and the steward's vision is fogged. You take the service corridor to the eastern wall and descend into the tunnel near the broken olive press. The map is etched in your memory now. You move fast, through the stone hollow where old scrolls were once hidden, past the rusted iron door marked with salt, around the sealed cistern that no one remembers anymore, and finally into the seventh circle. It's a room, small, windowless, lined with clay pots filled with sand. The walls are marked with chalk lines, dates, quantities, brief notations in shorthand, and in the center, a table. On it, one scroll. You unroll it slowly. It's a replica of the Sultan's official grain allotment, not the falsified one stored in the public archive, but the original. It confirms everything the circle suspected. That surplus grain was never delivered to the kitchens. That entire shipments were diverted. That someone or several someones have been reshaping the empire's food chain for years. And behind it all is a symbol you've never seen before, a green crescent with a single vertical line drawn through its center. You memorize it. You burn the scroll. When you return to the kitchens, the celebration is in full swing. You move through it unnoticed. Just another apprentice holding a tray of dates. But your hands shake slightly, because now you know the truth not just about food, but about power. In a palace like this, food is not just nourishment. It is record, it is wealth, it is silence and rebellion. That night, back at your mat, you find another note, tucked beneath your cot, almost carelessly. He's waiting, just that. And a date. You don't know if they mean Emre, or the man from the archive tower, or someone else entirely. But you'll go. You have to. Because the deeper you go, the more you understand the kitchens are not where the truth ends. They are where it starts. And it's not about survival anymore. It's about keeping the memory intact, even if it never makes it to daylight. Even if it outlives you. You don't sleep that night. You lie in the warmth of the dormitory, the quiet snoring of boys all around you, and stare up at the ceiling beams like they might part and show you the sky. But you know better. The kitchens of Topkapi were never meant for open air. You keep rereading the note in your mind. He's waiting? It doesn't say where, but the date is clear, and that date is today. So before sunrise, while the coals are still being raked, and the prep tables have yet to be scrubbed, you step into the corridor, not fast, not hesitant, just one step, then another, toward whatever comes next. You take the route through the unused herb vault, duck under the broken shelf, and follow the wall until it curves left toward the forgotten marble laundry, the one sealed after the fire 2 winters ago. You press the latch behind the old basin and push the door open. The man is already there. The archivist, the one from the tower, the one who looked at you not with suspicion, but with interest. He doesn't greet you. He simply gestures toward a wooden stool opposite him. You sit. On the table between you are 3 things: a blank scroll, an empty satchel, and a seal the same green crescent with the vertical line that you saw on the grain document. You've seen it now, he says, more than most ever do. You nod. Then you understand why it can't be spoken. You nod again. He leans forward slightly, elbows on knees, his voice low and calm. There are 2 records in every empire, one that feeds the story and one that feeds the truth. He taps the seal with his finger. We keep the second. You wait, listening. This kitchen, he says, gesturing upward vaguely. is not just a place to serve food. It is the spine of the palace. Every chamber, every noble, every scribe, they all depend on what passes through here. So when the story begins to rot, it rots from here first. You glance at the seal again. And what is that? He smiles faintly. A quiet symbol. It means a record was saved without being seen. Then, more softly. You saved many? You don't know what to say. Praise isn't common here, not in the kitchens, and never from someone this high in the invisible order. He slides the satchel toward you. You open it. Inside another scroll, but this one is different. Wrapped in oilcloth, weighted by a stone, and sealed not in wax, but in clay. You lift it. Deliver this, he says, to the mirror room. You blink. That's not a real place. It is, he says, but only for those who know where to stand. He explains. A corridor in the Palace of Pages, the one that reflects a sliver of afternoon light against the stone wall just above the scribe's stairwell. When the sun reaches that height, a shadow forms a perfect square. Behind that square is a loose brick. Behind the brick, a door. You look at the scroll again. What's inside history, he says, or something close enough. You go immediately. The walk to the Palace of Pages is long, but uneventful. You carry the satchel under your robe, arms pressed close to your sides, passing clerks and stewards with the calm of someone who belongs. When you reach the corridor, the light is there, a square of gold, hovering just above eye level. You wait for a moment when no one is around, then press your fingers to the stone. It shifts. The brick gives way with a dry scrape, and behind it a handle. You pull it open. A narrow stair descends. Not far, just enough to lead into shadow. At the bottom, a small room, empty, save for a polished sheet of obsidian mounted to the far wall. It reflects not like a mirror, but like a still pool of water. You step closer. In the reflection, you see yourself, but also something else. A second door behind you. You turn. It's there. You hadn't seen it when you entered, but it was there all along. You push it open. Inside shelves, scrolls, tablets, letters, bundles of reed paper. None labeled, none organized, just memory raw and unpolished. You place your scroll on the center table. It joins the rest. The clay seal cracks slightly as it touches the wood. A tiny fissure, almost unnoticeable. But you know what it means. You turn back. As you leave, the second door vanishes. And when you look back in the obsidian, it's just you. That night, you return to the kitchens. Nothing has changed, but everything feels different. You bake your loaves, you stir your pots, you smile when spoken to, you sleep eventually. But inside, there is a new stillness, because you know now that your work, your real work, will never be seen, never be recorded, never be praised. And that's the point. You are part of something older than praise, older than kitchen scrolls, older than the empire itself. You are part of memory, the invisible kind, the kind that waits for the right person to find it. The next morning, you wake early. A small parcel sits at the foot of your mat. Inside a single clove and a note. You've been added. You close your hand around the clove, you smile, then you rise, and you return to the ovens, where the fires never die. End of script. Sweet dreams.